I saw them first on the horizon, dozens of ships silent, drifting with no life aboard. No flags, no lights, no crew. And I realized something had returned from the depths of the ocean, something alive in the silence. Some nights, the sea whispers secrets that no living soul should hear. I had always thought the tales were just that, tales. Old fishermen muttering warnings in hushed tones, sailors refusing to navigate certain stretches of the Atlantic, stories of ships that vanished as if swallowed by the horizon. I never paid them much mind. Until that night. The water was black, smooth like liquid glass, reflecting only the ghostly glow of the moon. A chill ran down my spine as I noticed movement far on the horizon. At first I thought it was a trick of the waves, but then I saw them. A fleet. Dozens of ships gliding silently, unnaturally, as if carried by some unseen current. Every mast was a skeletal finger pointing accusingly at the heavens. The sight froze me in place, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. I squinted, searching for signs of life. Lanterns, shadows, voices, nothing. Not a single soul stirred on the decks. And yet, I heard it. A faint whispering, barely audible over the gentle lapping of the waves. It was not wind, not the sea. The voices were murmuring in a language I couldn't comprehend, as if the ocean itself was speaking through them. The air tasted of salt and something metallic, coppery, like blood in water. My hands trembled. I wanted to turn away, to convince myself I had imagined the whole thing. But an invisible force drew me closer, pulling me toward the edge of the pier. Something demanded that I see who, or what, was aboard those ships. Something whispered that I would regret it if I looked away. The closer I drew, the more unreal it became. The ships seemed older than time itself, barnacles clinging to their hulls like saws, sails tattered yet somehow intact, creaking softly despite the lack of wind. Shadows moved within shadows, yet the decks remained empty. And then the whispers grew louder, forming a chorus that tugged at the edges of my sanity. I could almost make out words. Or was it just my mind unraveling? I felt a sudden surge of fear, a primal instinct screaming for me to flee. But curiosity, that dangerous spark, held me rooted. My eyes darted across the fleet. One ship, larger than the rest, loomed at the center. Its bow carved through the darkness with an almost deliberate grace, as if leading the others. And for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure at the helm, tall, thin, impossibly still, before it vanished entirely, leaving only the whispering behind. Something was profoundly wrong. Entire fleets do not sail without their crews. Lives do not vanish into the night without a trace. And yet here they were, gliding silently, leaving questions more terrifying than any answer could provide. Where had the sailors gone? And what or who had taken their place? I stepped back, my heart pounding, the chill sinking deeper into my bones. The fleet continued its slow procession, oblivious to me, or perhaps aware in a way I could not comprehend. I knew, without understanding how, that this night was only the beginning, that the true horror was yet to come. And then it happened. A single low bell tolled from the largest ship. Not a bell of metal, but of something older, resonant, vibrating in my chest. The sound cut through the whispers and silence, freezing the air around me. I knew I had to follow, or I would never forgive myself. Or perhaps I would never survive. I turned my gaze back toward the fleet, and the unthinkable truth settled in my mind. They were watching me. By morning, the world had shifted. I found the records, brittle and yellowed, tucked away in a forgotten archive. Ships declared missing months ago, all suddenly appearing in the same stretch of ocean I had witnessed the night before. But the manifests were blank, no names, no crew, nothing. It was as if everyone had been erased. I boarded one vessel, the Mariner's Wraith, its deck slick with salt water and rust. The air smelled of decay and damp wood. Every cabin was frozen in a moment of domesticity, meals still on tables, charts sprawled as if the navigator had just stepped away, hammocks swaying gently with a wind I couldn't feel. Not a sound, but the faint creak of timbers. And then it began. Shadows flickered in the corners, vanishing when I turned. Footsteps followed me, slow, deliberate, but no one was there. The whispers started, a low, incoherent chorus rising from the walls themselves, forming words I couldn't understand, yet somehow felt deep in my bones. I descended into the cargo hold. The metal stairs groaned under my weight. There, the air was colder, the darkness thicker, almost alive. Shapes shifted just beyond sight, and the whispers became voices, murmuring my name. Panic surged. My pulse hammered in my ears. I stumbled into the captain's cabin. A journal lay open on the desk, pages blank, except for a single line scrawled in a shaky hand. They watch. They wait. You cannot leave. The words burned my eyes, though the ink was black and cold. Outside, the ocean was unnaturally still, a mirror reflecting the overcast sky. Then the bell tolled, not from my ship, but from all the surrounding vessels. 1, 2, 3 times. An impossible synchronicity that froze me in place. Something moved in the water. A shadow larger than any ship circling the fleet, trailing unseen tendrils beneath the surface. The hairs on my neck stood rigid. I wanted to flee, yet my legs refused. A compulsion, deep and unnatural, held me to the deck, whispering promises I didn't understand but feared to deny. As the sun waned, the fog thickened, wrapping the fleet in a ghostly shroud. The ships seemed to breathe, rising and dipping in unison, as if alive, aware of my presence. My chest tightened. Something beyond reason was here, watching, testing me. I felt smaller, human and fragile, and yet I could not turn away. Then, suddenly, the bell tolled again, louder, harsher, echoing across the empty decks. And in that moment I realized the truth. The fleet had not returned to our world to be seen. They had returned for a purpose, and now somehow I was part of it. I ran to the edge of the deck, peering into the fog. A pair of eyes glimmered beneath the water, impossibly bright and fixed on me. I stumbled back, breathless, as the ship shivered beneath my feet. The whispers surged into a scream of thousands, all calling from different directions at once. I covered my ears, but the sound burrowed into my skull. And then, silence. The bell had stopped. The ocean was calm. The fleet floated as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. Whatever haunted these waters, it had noticed me. And I had no idea what would come next. The fog began to pull back, revealing more ships on the horizon, each eerily identical, each crewless. And then I saw it. A shadow moving against the wind, something that should not exist, drifting toward me. I understood then this was no accident. The investigation had only begun, and the nightmare was far from over. Night fell like a shroud over the water, thick fog curling around the masts of the ghostly fleet. Each ship emerged as a shadowy silhouette, distorted and unreal, as if the darkness itself had taken shape. The silence was absolute, yet it pressed against my eardrums, heavy and accusing. The air tasted of salt and decay, and every breath felt like inhaling something that shouldn't exist. I stepped onto the deck of the nearest ship. The metal groaned beneath my feet, echoing like a drumbeat in the oppressive quiet. Every cabin I passed seemed frozen in time. Meals left half-eaten, charts still spread on tables, lanterns flickering with a dim, sickly light. Then I saw them, faces pressed against the portholes, pale, unmoving, yet their hollow eyes burned into me, deep voids that seemed to pull at my very soul. Not human, not alive. A chill ran through me, crawling under my skin. I reached for my radio, desperate to call for help. The static hissed back, 1,000 voices whispering together, unintelligible yet horrifyingly coherent. The water around the hulls rippled unnaturally, black shadows slithering beneath the surface, circling, waiting, watching. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. Something moved below, something that didn't belong to this world. Eyes unseen yet judging, calculating, hunting. Suddenly I felt it, a cold brush against my shoulder. I spun around, but no one was there. Then a voice, sharp and frigid, whispered directly in my ear, "You should not have come." The words seemed to crawl into my skull, rooting fear in every thought. My legs moved before my mind could catch up, sprinting across the slick deck. Every step echoed like a cannon in an empty cathedral, each one drawing me closer to madness. As I ran, the fog thickened, swallowing the ships behind me. I dared a glance back. The fleet had vanished, or maybe it was always there, hidden in the mist. Shapes shifted in the periphery of my vision, shadows stretching, twisting, never staying still. A sudden, unnatural chill pressed down on me, and I felt the impossible. The ships were breathing, moving as if alive, guided by something that had been waiting, patient and malignant. The whispers grew louder, circling around me, carrying fragments of laughter and cries, both human and not. The air itself seemed to vibrate with menace. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet every fiber of my being knew I could never truly escape. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. One misstep, one glance too long at the darkness, and I could become part of it, another shadow in the fleet, trapped forever. Then in the distance a shape rose from the water, too vast to be a ship, too dark to be mere shadow. The sea churned around it, waves thrashing like wild beasts. The fog parted just enough to reveal an eye, glimmering, intelligent, ancient, and it fixed me in its gaze. I stumbled backward, breathless, as a thought clawed into my mind. It knows I'm here, and I cannot leave. I ran blindly into the mist, the echo of whispers and the creak of ghostly timbers pursuing me. The fleet, or whatever had commanded it, had vanished again. But the sensation remained, a cold, persistent presence, circling, waiting. Whatever haunted these waters was patient. It was inevitable, and I was still here, alone. The fog swallowed me, the shadows pressing closer, and a final whisper reached my ears, more human, more desperate than the others. Do not look back. And I knew, with terrifying clarity, that the horror was not over, not even close. The sea was calm the night they returned, too calm. The fog hugged the harbor like a living shroud, thick and suffocating, obscuring the docks in a ghostly gray. I stood at the edge of the pier, my breath trembling in the cold, watching shapes emerge through the mist. Masts, sharp and skeletal, cut through the haze, every ship eerily still, gliding as if guided by hands unseen. Weeks of terror had led to this moment. Every warning, every shadow, every whisper in the dark echoed in my mind, louder now than ever. The fleet was here, and yet something about their arrival made my stomach churn with dread. These were not just empty ships. They were vessels of expectation, of malice, carrying the lingering weight of vanished souls. I approached cautiously, my footsteps swallowed by the fog. The harbor authorities were already here, their faces pale, eyes wide, faces frozen in disbelief. They're back, one whispered. And indeed they were. Every ship returned intact, hulls pristine, cargo untouched, logs carefully recorded, but not a single crew member remained. Their cabins were immaculate. Meals lay half-eaten on tables. Charts were open, pens still poised over ink. It was as if time had paused just for them, preserving a world without life. And then I saw it. The shadows. They moved beneath the decks, flickering at the edges of perception. Not human, but not entirely of this world either. I felt them watching, patient, deliberate, like predators that had finally circled back to survey their prey. My pulse raced as I realized the truth the authorities refused to speak aloud. They were not lost at sea. They had been taken, observed, and perhaps transformed. A chill wrapped around my spine. A mast creaked, and a whisper rippled through the fog, a soft, elongated syllable that carried both warning and welcome. "Return," it breathed. The word didn't come from a human throat, yet I understood it. The fleet's journey had never ended. It was ongoing, eternal, and those who vanished had not simply disappeared. They had been claimed, made part of something that existed beyond comprehension. I staggered back, nearly tripping over ropes slick with sea spray. Around me the water shimmered unnaturally, rippling with shapes that moved just beneath the surface. Hands, faces, Impossible forms, reaching, grasping, watching. The fog thickened, curling like smoke around the ships, concealing more than it revealed. And in that concealment, the fleet seemed infinite, stretching beyond sight, a manifestation of patience and inevitability. A sudden noise, wood snapping under impossible weight, made me freeze. From the bow of one vessel, a figure emerged, not fully formed, more shadow than substance, eyes empty but burning with a faint, unnatural glow. It moved deliberately toward me, leaving the deck intact as if the ship itself allowed it passage. A voice, hollow and echoing, whispered my name. My name. Not my mind, not my thoughts, but the sound of me, called across the water by something older than fear itself. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, realizing that the fleet had been waiting for me as much as it had waited for them. For weeks, I had escaped shadows, heard warnings, glimpsed whispers. Now I understood. It was not about survival. It was about recognition, a reckoning. And then, as suddenly as it began, the fog swallowed the fleet. Shapes dissolved into the night, leaving the harbor eerily empty. But the water was wrong. I could feel it pulsing, alive, patient. And from the mist came the faintest echo, the creak of a mast, a soft footstep on wood, and voices that called in unison, soft, insistent, inhuman. I ran, stumbling over the slick pier, never daring to look back. But even as I reached the safety of the city lights, I knew it had not ended. The fleet had returned, yes, but it was patient, eternal, waiting, watching. And when the fog comes again, it will return. No one believes the tales, no one hears the whispers, but I do. And now so will you. The sea takes and the sea waits, and it always calls back what it claims.